Hello and welcome to Roll on the Adventure, the podcast where we create, we play, and we analyze role-playing games. This is Dimitris. I will be hosting the second half of this show. Today, due to some scheduling issues, we cannot be hosting a show in our regular format, so Molly and I will be doing a show where we demonstrate some world building techniques we've developed over the years. I think that Dave is going to be in Molly's part of the show. And the tips and techniques I'm going to be showing you today are going to be valid with any role-playing game, even the ones we create, or fantasy, or horror, or different things. I know that Molly is going to focus on prep, and in a sense this is what I'm going to do as well, but Molly's focus is on how much you need to prep, while I will focus on character relations, on major ways to help populate your campaign setting with plot hooks, essentially. But before I get started with the show, let's do the theme tune of Roll on the Adventure. Roll on the adventure, roll on the adventure, roll on the adventure. Okay, that was a different take, but usually it's four of us and now just me, so it will have to do. I'm terribly sorry, but that's it. So, let's start from the beginning. Why is creating characters and relationships between characters connected to world building? I think that the main thing that attracts us to fiction in general, be it role-playing games, or it could be movies or literature or comic books, is finding connections, finding things that resonate with each other. One of the major appeals of Star Wars, for example, was the Stormtroopers, and the Stormtroopers are a representation of pretty much Nazis in most people's imagination and understanding. Even the name Stormtroopers is reflected in this, but also the tactics, the marching band theme songs, the Imperial March, and all that stuff. The way they walk, it's built in to evoke into the viewer a gut feeling about something else that the viewer can relate to. In the same way we do most other things in fiction, and we neglect a lot this aspect while we world build. We tend to focus on creating the continents and the cities and the streams and rivers, but we sometimes forget how influential people are in the shaping of the world. So the main concern here is trying to find ways to create non-player characters, either in the time period your players are in, or in the past of the world, and how these things shaped the universe, the world. When I started playing role-playing games, I was designated game master from almost the beginning, and the main reason for this was that, well, I grew up before the internet. I was about 12 in 2000, where I got a copy of 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, and first I bought the player's handbook. I played a few sessions, and I wanted to invest in the hobby essentially, and I bought the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual, and these shaped the way I play games since. In that time and age, consuming media was different. This abundance of TV shows and books and comic books and the internet and articles and Wikipedia didn't exist. Because you can get lost in Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is going to be featured later in our discussion. But yes, so the point was that the best way to be creative in this stage of my life was to open up the Dungeon Master's Guide, browse in all the different options about creating cities and NPCs and economy systems and magical items and things like this. And it kept growing. I had a notebook, and it pretty much became alive with magical items I created. I tried to do as much, giving backstories as much as I can and things like that. The one thing I tried to do was every game I played, every game I would be a dungeon master of, it would be situated on the same world, and my idea for creating different games, different groups and different campaigns was to set them apart in time. So I would have a wide history in my world, about 3,000 years span of events, and a great idea came to my mind. So the player characters of 3,000 years ago would be mythological, legendary people in the contemporary world of the other group. So I kept doing that, and I realized how close this was to actual life, where I was simultaneously growing up and reading about history and reading about political science and growing up even more and more and more. And I'm 31 now. I'm 18, 19 years older than this 12-year-old kid, and I now know that most things other than physical landscape features, and sometimes even these, have been created by people. We live in a time of artificial lakes, or dried lakes, or river dams, or canals. This is purely because of some people. Somebody actually woke up and said, today I'm going to dry a lake. And obviously there's a lot of convincing. There's it's probably a scientist or probably a politician trying to shape the world, but sometimes it just blows up. And as you go backwards in time with less bureaucracy, less scientific thought, less public works and things like this, these choices and these happenings in the world are more arbitrary. So you have kingdoms. The Byzantine Empire comes to mind. That the Byzantine Empire split because one of the emperors wanted to for his children to inherit half of his kingdom. He loved them equally, and he gave them the two halves of the Roman Empire. And then, you know, history wasn't the same afterwards. But in the most distilled part of it, it's one parent giving inheritance to two children equally. So this is a very reasonable thing to have existed in your game, in your chronicle, your campaign, your setting. When I started creating my own worlds, most of the non-player characters of the game, most of the kings and queens and people and merchants and nations even were based on things I was experiencing in that time, and it still happens. I just have a wider range or a wider palette to choose from, but essentially it's the same. So how do you make this work? What is tangible advice for you to use? Well, I have a few techniques I want to showcase in this episode, in this hour. The first thing is that you need to take notes. It's absolutely necessary to take notes while you're world building. You will kick yourself hard many times if you forget something that appeared to be a brilliant idea and you lost it just because you said, oh, I'll write it down tomorrow, I am sure with this. And note taking is the most important skill that I can suggest that you pick up as fast as possible. I use pen and paper just for jotting down ideas as they appear, and when I have something concrete, I use a tool called World Anvil. I'm a subscriber of World Anvil, but there's a free version of it, and you can check it out. The only caveat is that you cannot build a private world in World Anvil. That means that every world building thing you're going to do is going to be visible to the rest of the users of World Anvil, or anyone with a link, essentially. And that's not a bad thing, but it helps if you have player characters that have access to this platform. They might have spoilers, or they might see some background that you want to reveal to them with a more dramatic way. But otherwise, it's absolutely fine, and I suggest it wholeheartedly. World Anvil is pretty much in development right now, and features change all the time, always for the better. That's I've been very happy with it, and it's free, so you can try it. Now, note-taking aside, the main concern here is, how do I make interesting characters that are going to shape the world? When I started, I thought that the answer was in the game rulebooks, the supplements, and it is true that a lot of role-playing games have very detailed non-player character creation rules, and they help you flesh out, create the spells for them, and the encounter levels and things like this. But if you don't want to make NPCs as encounters, and if you want to make NPCs as world building forces, essentially, you cannot rely on these. They give you very little in terms of what motivates your NPCs, what brings them to life, what makes them relatable, the same thing that a lot of successful works of fiction do so well. But this doesn't mean that you have to do everything abstractly and roughly. There are tools and techniques you can use. A lot of writers, script writers, book writers use these tools, and we're going to see them as well. So the first thing I would like to introduce is the 36 plots. The 36 plots is a model, a way to categorize different dramatic situations. It was a list by George Polty. The list was published in the 19th century, but an English translation was published in 1916. And basically it highlights different things that are pretty much the only 36 things that happen in your fiction. Now, a lot of you who are conscious about such things might have heard of the hero's journey, and you even might use it in your chronicle design, your campaign design. But the hero's journey is different. The hero's journey highlights the circle that is undertaken by a hero, by a specific person, or your group in this case, and it is a dramatic tool. It's a way to chart the rhythm and pacing your story has to take. The 36 situations is different. That it doesn't concern rhythm at all. It just lists the different actions that any character, hero or not, can do to another character. So, for example, I will list these 36. Supplication. The king asks the player characters to bring him the golden fleece. Supplication needs three things to exist. One is the persecutor, the person who wants something. The other is the suppliant, the person who provides this thing. And the third is pretty much the thing itself, the MacGuffin, you could say. So how can we use this to do world building? Let's say the game in question is Mutants and Masterminds, a superhero game, for example. The player characters are in Paragon City, which is a nondescript American metropolis in contemporary age. Suddenly, the skies open and the player characters' evil doppelgangers appear, sent there by Dr. Brainiac to capture and bring back the watch of time stop. This is obviously, a MacGuffin that I just made up, but the idea is the same. The player characters now have to respond, but there's an interesting thing happening. They're not the ones asked to by the king to bring the golden fleece. They are basically responding to this, that the world is changing due to this invasion. The newspapers will have this event plastered over the head titles, and this is how another person's, a non-player character's supplication quest can affect other people as well. The second of the situations is deliverance. You have an unfortunate, a threatener, and a rescuer. And the unfortunate has caused a conflict, and the threatener is to carry out justice, but the rescuer saves the unfortunate. If the player characters are the rescuers, then this is just designing your campaign. But how can we use this in world building? Let's say we have a vampire game. The prince of the city wants to execute a neonate because that neonate disrespected the prince in front of everyone. However, one of the elders of the city calls in a favor, and the prince grudgingly has to let the neonate go. Now, when space in the Council of Primogents is opened up, the prince doesn't choose the elder in question, but he chooses a lesser status vampire. Now, if one of our players' character is a child of this lesser status vampire that took the place of the elder in the Primogent Council, now this elder might have a grudge against our player characters. This is world building. This is creating a dramatic and tense situation where we can understand the players, we can understand the way they move, and we can relate to this, and we can have planning it. And again, it has little to do with how the chronicle itself is going to be structured and the pacing, and we don't use the dramatic situation to determine our plot, but again it creates a hook for our players to be invested and enjoy the game. I think you are getting the gist of it, and you can find more about the 36 dramatic situations in Wikipedia. But I'll do one more just to be sure that we've got it. The third one, presented by George Pulte, is Crime Pursued by Vengeance. It needs a criminal and an avenger. The criminal commits a crime that will not see justice, so the avenger seeks justice by punishing the criminal. So again, it's really easy to think of a situation where our player characters need to respond to something, but let's find a way for this to be part of our world building. Let's say we have a Star Wars game set in the Old Republic era. The son of one of the leaders of one of the noble houses of Alderaan embezzles from the family funds and falsely accuses one of the allies of this house for this crime. The allies of this great house decide that this is preposterous, and they move outside the jurisdiction and the protection of the noble house, and they create their own small estate in the outskirts of the region. So this way, the player characters, starting as members of this household, have less deep pockets and more reason to travel around the galaxy for fortune, as their house is quite poor. This way we turn something that would be, if it was straightforward, it would provide a forced way for our player characters to spring into action. Now we have something more organic, something that is more motivating, and they have a wider selection of things that they can choose from, and still we can put all these as plot hooks to drive them into an enticing story. I don't want to drag this more and give you more examples from each type. I will just briefly list all the 36 dramatic situations. So the next one is vengeance taken for kin upon kin, with a guilty kinsman, a avenging kinsman, remembrance of the victim, a relative of both, pursuit that has punishment and a fugitive, disaster, a vanquished power, a victorious enemy or a messenger, falling prey to cruelty or falling prey to misfortune. We got revolt, with a tyrant and a conspirator. We got daring enterprise with a bold leader, an object, and an adversary. We got abduction with an abductor, an abducted, and a guardian. We got the enigma, a problem, an interrogator, and a seeker. We got obtaining, a solicitor, and an arbitrator. We got enmity of kin. We got rivalry of kin. We got murderous adultery, madness, fatal imprudence, involuntary crimes of love, slaying of kin unrecognized. We got self-sacrifice for an ideal. We got self-sacrifice for kin, all sacrifice for passion. Got necessity of sacrificing loved ones, rivalry of superior versus inferior, adultery, crimes of love, discovery of the dishonor of a loved one, obstacles to love, an enemy loved, ambition, conflict with a god, mistaken jealousy, erroneous judgment, remorse, recovery of a lost one, loss of loved ones. So this is the best way to make sure that you have a solid starting ground. If you don't know what to do, if you're starting with a blank page, you have decided you want to run a game, find the game system, and then go on your blank page, and you can randomize it. You can say, okay, I'll pick a number between 1 and 36. Let's say it's 24. 24 is rivalry of superior versus inferior. Okay, we've got a superior rival, an inferior rival, and the object of rivalry. Try to find something not just for your characters to do. This will happen in the later stage, but try to find a good situation that would shape the world, would shape the immediate environment of your characters with this plot. Rivalry of superior versus inferior is you have a strong country and a weak country, or you have a strong gang and a weak gang, or anything really. Like, you can use this to turn this into whatever you want. Another tool I've been using more and more frequently in world building and characters and relations is tarot cards. I've recently purchased a deck. I'm not much of a spiritual person, and the reason I bought this deck was just for world building and storytelling. So I don't know how to do any spreads, but even just picking one card at a time can help you a lot. And I have the most classic one, I think, the Rider-Waite deck. Tarot cards are different. I would suggest that you don't buy any novelty ones, not for any other reason, but the older decks have much more intricate iconography in each card, so that you got more pictures, more symbols, more different things that are happening. So the way I use them is quite simple. Every deck usually comes with a set of instructions on how to interpret different cards, but on the same time you can gather much meaning from the iconography on the cards themselves. So if I pick a card at random, I would have, for example, I have the Judgment card reversed. If I go to my reading instructions, the booklet that comes with the deck, I find Justice at 11, and it says equity, rightness, probity, executive. And reversed, which is how my card appeared, is law in all departments, bigotry, bias, excessive severity. Now, all these things give a sense of world building. They're all abstract concepts that can shape a world. But the card itself also has very evocative pictures. There's an angel that sounds a trumpet. There's a white flag with a red cross that could be the flag of England in other cases. You could see some people coming out of what seems to be coffins. They're all naked. There's a blonde woman. And for the occult savvy, that is an image from the apocalypse. When the angel sounds the horn, the dead will get out from their graves. This is essentially this image depicted. So, how can I use these tarot cards to shape my world building? Let's say we start with a pretty much blank page world. We have absolutely nothing in mind. So the first card will determine our genre. And the first genre that springs to mind with apocalypse is obviously post-apocalyptic. But we can also do a sort of religious horror, end of days sort of game. But let's go for post-apocalyptic just because. I don't really enjoy post-apocalyptic games, and this is a good thing for demonstration purposes because I can show that it's not about what is, what your genre savvy, but actually how you can use this technique to create things from nothing. So let's pick a second card, and this card will be our player character's starting location. So the main area or region or country they're situated in. So the card I pick here is the Page of Pentacles, and in the instructions the Page of Pentacles is a dark youth, a young officer or soldier, a child, application, study, scholarship, reflection. Another reading says news, message, and the bringer of these. Also rule and management. So in the picture there's a young dark-haired person wearing some sort of Renaissance clothes in a meadow. But a very exciting thing about this picture is that there's a bright yellow sky, and it could be, the sunset, but in this case, or dawn, but in this case we can actually, since it's a post-apocalyptic game, we can actually situate it in a world where the sky is literally yellow. So I take my notepad and write yellow sky, and I'm looking to find more things to describe our place of origin. So the Page of Pentacles has application, study, scholarship, reflection as keywords. So a good idea would be a university, perhaps. I write down university in my notepad, and I've already established a pattern here. So a post-apocalyptic game in a university as the starting location might mean that whatever prompted the apocalypse, whatever prompted the end of civilization as we know it, might have started in such a university, perhaps an airborne virus or experiment gone wrong, but already you see patterns forming all around you. So the next natural thing would be to create a person, and I want to create the person who created this catastrophe. It might be our villain in this story. So I pick a new card, and the new card is Justice reversed. So Justice depicted here is a woman wearing red robes, holding the the justice balances and a sword. She wears a crown and she's sitting on some sort of crimson throne as well. So I will write on my notepad Crimson Woman as the creator of this catastrophe. And now I'm going to create a person that opposes this Crimson Woman. So pick another card, which will be the Magician. The Magician is a person holding a candle high. It's a man. There's a sword on the table, a pentacle, a cup, and a wand, all the signs of the tarot. There are flowers decorating the scene, so I will write down the Flower Man in my notepad. And this is the opposition. The Flower Man might sound silly as a concept, but again, this is a depiction. This is evoking certain responses to you right now, and to me right now, and to your players' imaginations as well. And in a post-apocalyptic game, there are different ways to depict characters. So why not the Flower Man? So this is the opposition. It makes sense for our characters to discover the opposition to the villain later in the game, not in the beginning. So they must have someone that's offering patronage from the Crimson Woman. So I'll pick another card, and it's the Moon. So the Moon is saying hidden enemies, danger, calumny, darkness, terror, deception, error in the booklet that explains the card's meanings. So the first idea that springs to mind is that the moon is connected with nighttime. So contrasting with the yellow sky, which is probably during the day, we could say that our characters are safe during nighttime. So I'll write down nighttime in my notepad and just say characters are safe. But I can also go back to the divinatory meanings and find, be inspired by the darkness and hidden enemies and deception theme, and say the characters find a person during nighttime that is actually their enemy. So I will write down that in the first night they find a merchant, and this merchant offers them some help, but in reality he's an agent of the Crimson Woman. So you can see how with just 5 cards I've created a setting that is rich and evocative, and you can base a game on. And I'm really not using at all any special genre conventions. I'm not really versed in post-apocalyptic games, so this is actually just me trying to make some sense from what I'm seeing in the cards. And you can use the cards to describe places, you can use the cards to describe people. You have the tools you need to create some more free-form non-player characters that don't necessarily abide by the random encounter tables and then NPC creation tables that your game offers. Now, the cool thing with this is that you can use these two techniques essentially combined. So you can mix the tarot cards with the 36 plots and create the interesting tensions that will shape your world and make it even more interesting for your player characters. So we can see how we can use this. So we have established the world of the yellow sky, where some sort of scientific experiment has destroyed the world. There's the Crimson Woman, which is our villain essentially, and the Flower Man is the opposition, probably some force that actively fights her. And there's also the merchant, who's trying to help the player characters at the beginning, but is an agent of the Crimson Woman. So how can we marry this to the 36 dramatic situations? We can ask with a question like, why is the Crimson Woman the creator of this catastrophe? And one way, probably the best way, would be to pick, but I really want to show you that there's absolutely no way of doing these things wrong if you randomize it. So I'll randomize and find one number that corresponds to one of the dramatic situations, and I rolled a 12. So number 12 is obtaining. A solicitor and an adversary who is refusing, or an arbitrator and opposing parties. The solicitor is at odds with the adversary, who refuses to give the solicitor an object in the possession of the adversary, or an arbitrator decides who gets the object desired by opposing parties, the solicitor and the adversary. Example is the apple of discord. The apple of discord is the way that the Trojan War started. So I think that this dramatic situation is actually quite relevant to what we're going for. So we need a solicitor, and I think the solicitor is probably the Flower Man, and the adversary is obviously the Crimson Woman. So what is this item? It could be a cure for the thing that has destroyed the world. So if it's, shielding against radiation, or an antidote to a disease that was created by the Crimson Woman. So the Flower Man essentially wants the Crimson Woman to give up the cure. And it might sound that we're really close to what we had, but we have a new item right now, and the new item is that there is a cure. There is a way to prevent or shield or fix this situation. So we got something important. It's not a MacGuffin, because it really plays an important role to what we're having in this universe. So we can go now and find one dramatic situation for the Flower Man to be in, and I will roll the dice, and I got vengeance taken for kin upon kin. And it has a guilty kinsman and avenging kinsman, remembrance of the victim, a relative of both. Two entities, the guilty and the avenging kinsman, are put into conflict over wrongdoing to the victim, who is allied to both. So this means that the Flower Man and another person who is family to the Flower Man has done some wrong to a victim. Now, this means we have to introduce two more players to this scene, and they might be there regardless of the main plot, regardless of if the player characters will follow this thread. But it gives depth, it gives motivation, it gives some understanding of the character and deepens them. So perhaps when they'll go to the Flower Man's campsite, they might interact one of these people, or it just might not seem really clear at the moment, but we can use this. So let's try to flesh out these two people, and the first person to flesh out will I'll pick a random tarot card to get information and understanding of this person, and I pick the Seven of Cups reversed. So I will go to the description of the Seven of Cups and have fairy favors, images of reflection, sentiment, imaginations, things seen in the glass of contemplation, some attainment in these degrees, but nothing permanent or substantial is suggested. Also, a fair child, idea, design, movement. So I like the idea that of the child, and we can definitely say that there is in the world the child of the flower man. I write it down on my notepad, who is also there is idea, design, and movement here, and I could say the child is a scientist. I write it down. So now we have something even better because we got a good understanding of the flower man. And if the child is a scientist, we could say that the child was working on a cure for this catastrophe, this calamity that has fallen on the world, and the flower man with his actions has sent his child away. On the card, the Seven of Cups, there is this girl, and I will say that it's a girl, child, so it's could be a young woman scientist. And since the dramatic situation we're working with is vengeance taken for kin upon kin, it makes sense that the other kin member is the mother of this young woman scientist. So I will pick a card, tarot card for the mother, and I have the Three of Cups. And the Three of Cups is described as the conclusion of a matter in plenty, perfection and merriment, happy outcome, victory, fulfillment, solace, healing, an unexpected advancement for a military man. So this doesn't help very much with creating a mother figure, but we can definitely see some keywords here. We got victory, we got military man, and we can say that this woman is was part of the military before the situation happened. So write it down. The mother of the child, well, I shouldn't say child because it's a child of someone, but it's a woman scientist. So the mother of the scientist, I write it down in my notepad, used to be in the military. So you see how merging these two techniques has already created a very evocative situation, and there's some really strong drama here. So the good guy, the opposition to the Crimson Woman, has made some mistakes that have hurt his daughter and has put him into odds with the daughter's mother, that they can be still married or never married, or separated. Doesn't really matter. You can create these connections. You can connect these lines as this process goes forward, and basically you can have a whole new, very intense setting in just an afternoon, and you can find an appropriate system. Or if you're playing in an established system, you can always make sure that all the things you're doing conform to your system. So our choice with being post-apocalyptic started with just drawing a random tarot card, but you can say, okay, my game is a sci-fi game and I want to do the same again. So there's no problem there. You can use this literally and virtually for anything. And this is the biggest advance of these techniques. So now I can go back to the half a page I've jotted down in my notes, and I have post-apocalyptic, yellow sky, university, crimson woman, who is the creator of the catastrophe, the flower man, who is the opposition. I got nighttime, which is a time where our characters are safe. The first night they find the merchant. The merchant is an agent of the Crimson Woman. The child of the Flower Man is a scientist. The mother of the scientist used to be in the military. So I have all these things. I have these ideas on my notepad, and now I can flesh them out even more. And this is where Well Dunville comes into this situation, and it becomes very useful. In the past I used to do this in Wikipedia, and basically all I had was connections between these ideas and these links, but Wikipedia is quite undifferentiated, while Will Danville is targeted specifically to world building. So what I can do is go to my world anvil and create a world, and in this world I can input all this information as discrete things. So I can put characters as characters and locations as locations, and I'll go through an example of what a new character looks like in World Anvil, because it helps you ask more questions about these dramatic objects like people or scenes. So looking at a character creation profile, we got a few fields like year of birth. Even this choice can help you materialize this thing. You can do something out of your imaginations, like we could say it's the year 3000, or we could say it's the year 2020, and this will have a different result in our world building. But answering these questions, like there's the year of death, eyes, hair, height, weight, ethnicity, species, current location, you can use all these things, or if there is this person has a title or a given name, family name, or mental, there's a personal history, education, employment, accomplishments, failures, achievements, mental trauma, intellectual characteristics. There's all these sort of writing prompts in World Anvil that can help you jut out and use this tool to embellish what you're doing and create more and more and more interesting situations. And if you're not obsessed with checking these fields like one by one and writing really, deep backstories for the characters, it's going to be even easier to create more things, because in the beginning you have to go shallow and wide. So move forward, always find one new person, one new dramatic situation, and go forward. You don't need to go through the scientist girl educational background right now, but it helps to populate your world as much as you need with this sort of situations. And again, you can use these even in predefined settings and do world building in the settings. One thing that people assume about world building is this is a feature of homebrew settings, but it's not. You can use this sort of world building into any setting. You can use this sort of world building to Star Wars, for example, that's got wide places that you can place your characters in that are literally, not pre-created for you, or you can use them even in places where everything is packed full of different characters and backstories. For example, let's say in a vampire game, that you have the real world as as a background. You don't really need to go through this process to find who Donald Trump is, or who Queen Victoria was, or how these events shaped the world. But again, you can use these things for the first vampire of your city, or you can go really local and say, okay, I want to build the off-license place that exists in my game world. My characters usually hang out in a bar. How can I use world building of this focus to create a more interesting nightclub situation or a bar situations? I'll pick a card for the bartender, and I got the 10 of Pentacles, which means absolutely nothing to me in the way I look at it. But if I go to the instructions, I got gain, riches, family matters, archives, extraction. This card can represent a house or dwelling, the abode of a family, and derives its value from other cards. So it literally says pick another card. This is the house of the card, and it makes sense with the bar situation. So I'll pick the second card, and I got the 3 of Pentacles reversed. And the 3 of Pentacles reversed, I got vocation, trade, skilled labor, usually, however, regarded as a card of nobility, aristocracy, renown, glory. If for a man, celebrity for his eldest son. Reversed means mediocrity in work and otherwise, puerility, pettiness, weakness. Interpretation depends on the neighboring card. So I got the neighboring card as an abode or a place. So I would say that this bar is run by a man whose son is famous, and he tries to cash in to his son fame, and he's got his face plastered all over the walls. You could say he is a movie star, and I can pick another card for the movie star and have the Ace of Wands. You know how this is how it goes. This is how this thing progresses. You can use these techniques to augment your game. I'm really looking forward to hearing any comments or any if you had any luck, if you tried it, if you have any objections to the things I'm saying. I'm always open to interpretation. I would love these things in your comments in YouTube. This technique has been with me for a long time. I'm really excited to be sharing it with you. I hope you enjoyed this 1 hour part of the podcast. At the time that this recording goes on air, most of our producers are going to be in the UK Games Expo in Birmingham. So I would strongly suggest you go and say hi in person. Everyone is going to be delighted about that. Play games, enjoy, make sure you keep tinkering with your games. I really hope that this show is an inspiration for the most shy of game masters out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Dimitris Lazaru, and this was Roll on the Adventure.